A billionaire's daughter lay in a hospital bed, and no one could wake her up. Not the specialists flown in from overseas, not the machines that beeped and hummed around her, not the prayers her mother whispered every single night. For 3 months, the girl had not opened her eyes. Then one afternoon, a young woman who had nothing walked into the room. She was not a doctor. She had no degree. But she carried something none of them had ever seen before. What happened next would shake everyone in that hospital to their core. But to understand how it all began, we need to go back to a quiet morning in the city of Johannesburg. The private wing of Mill Park Hospital was always calm. The floors were polished. The lights were soft. The staff moved carefully, speaking in low voices. But behind the door of room 19, there was a heaviness that no amount of luxury could lift. On the bed lay a young girl named Nia. She was only 9 years old. Her face was peaceful, almost as if she were simply sleeping. But Nia had not opened her eyes in 3 months. Her body was alive. The machines showed that her heart was beating. Her lungs were working. But her mind had gone somewhere no one could reach. Her father's name was Kofi Asante. Everyone in Johannesburg knew that name. He owned one of the largest construction firms in all of southern Africa. His buildings stood in city centers across the continent. He had power. He had wealth. He had connections in places most people could only dream of. But none of that could wake his daughter. Kofi stood by the window of the hospital room. His hands were behind his back. His suit was perfectly tailored, but his face carried the weight of a man who had not slept properly in weeks. He stared at the city below, but his mind was not there. His wife, Ya, sat beside Nia's bed. She held her daughter's hand gently and hummed an old lullaby. Her eyes were swollen. She had cried so much over the past months that she no longer tried to hide it. The door opened quietly. Dr. Mabaso walked in with a clipboard. He had been Nia's doctor from the beginning. He was a respected neurologist, one of the best in the country. But even he looked tired. "Mr. Asante," he said gently. Kofi did not turn from the window. "What is it?" "We received the results from the team in London." Ya looked up. "And?" Dr. Mabaso paused. He looked at the clipboard, then at the couple. They were not able to identify the cause. The room went silent. Ya's hand tightened around Nia's fingers. "What do you mean they could not identify it?" "We have tested for every known neurological condition," Dr. Mabaso said carefully. "Every scan, every blood panel, every specialist review, the results are all the same. There is no structural damage, no infection, no toxin. Her brain appears normal on every test." Kofi finally turned around. His voice was low but sharp. "So you are telling me that my daughter has been lying in this bed for 3 months, and the best doctors in the world do not know why?" Dr. Mabaso lowered his head slightly. "We are still looking, sir. We have not given up." "Looking," Kofi repeated. He walked over to Nia's bed and looked down at his daughter. Her small hand rested on the white sheet. He touched it gently, and for a moment, the powerful man looked completely helpless. Ya wiped her face with the back of her hand. "Is there anything else we can try?" The doctor spoke quietly. "There is one option I want to discuss with you." He paused. "It may be better for Nia to come home." Ya's eyes widened. "Home? You want to send her home?" "Not send her away," the doctor said quickly. "But sometimes patients respond better in familiar surroundings. We can continue monitoring her at home. I will visit every day." Kofi looked at Ya. Something passed between them without words. Finally, Ya nodded slowly. 2 days later, Nia was brought home. The Asante mansion sat behind tall walls in the wealthy suburb of Sandhurst. It was a beautiful house, wide windows, a garden filled with roses, rooms that once echoed with Nia's laughter. Now the house was painfully quiet. A special room was set up for Nia on the ground floor. New monitors, a hospital bed, medical equipment. Nurses came in shifts, but Nia's condition did not change. Weeks passed. Kofi continued to work, but his focus was broken. During meetings, his mind drifted to his daughter's face. Ya tried to stay strong, but the strain was breaking her apart. She stopped attending social events. She stopped returning phone calls. Most evenings, she simply sat beside Nia's bed, holding her hand and talking to her as if the girl could hear every word. One evening, Ya sat alone in the kitchen. It was past midnight. The house was still. She held a cup of tea that had gone cold hours ago. Tears fell quietly down her cheeks. Kofi walked in. He sat down across from her. He said softly. She did not look up. I am losing her, Kofi. No, do not say that. 3 months. Her voice cracked. 3 months and nothing has changed. No answer. No treatment. Nothing. Kofi reached across the table and held her hand. He had no words. For the first time in his life, his money, his influence, and his power meant absolutely nothing. The next morning, the household manager came to speak with Ya. Ma'am, the night nurse has resigned. Ya closed her eyes. Another one. Yes, ma'am. She said the situation was too difficult for her emotionally. Ya nodded slowly. This was the third nurse to leave. Caring for Nia was not physically demanding, but the emotional toll was heavy. Watching a child lie still day after day with no improvement broke people down. We need to find someone else, Ya said. Someone patient, someone strong. I will contact the care agency, the manager replied. Far from the mansions of Sandhurst on the other side of Johannesburg, a bus pulled to a stop on a crowded street in Hillbrow. The door opened and passengers stepped out one by one into the morning noise of the city. Among them was a young woman carrying a single bag. Her name was Lindiwe. She was 24 years old, slim, with kind eyes and a quiet manner. She stepped onto the pavement and looked around at the tall buildings, the passing cars, the people rushing in every direction. She held a folded piece of paper in her hand, an address written in neat handwriting by her friend. Lindiwe had never been to Johannesburg before. Until a few weeks ago, her entire world had been a small village in the Eastern Cape. Life there was simple. She had lived with her grandmother, the only family she had ever known. Her parents had passed away when she was very young. Her grandmother raised her alone, but Grandmother Makosi was no ordinary woman. People came from villages far away to see her. She was a healer, not the kind who wore beads and made promises. She was quiet, careful, deeply knowledgeable about plants and the body and the mind. She understood things about sickness that went beyond what most people could explain. When Lindiwe was a child, she used to sit beside her grandmother and watch. "Gogo, why do you put those leaves in the water first?" she would ask. Her grandmother would smile patiently. "Because some plants give their medicine slowly, my child. You cannot rush them, just like healing. It takes time." Lindiwe grew up surrounded by this knowledge. She helped her grandmother prepare remedies. She learned which roots eased fever, which bark calmed the stomach, and she learned something else. Something her grandmother taught her that went beyond herbs entirely. Sometimes Grandmother Makosi had said one evening, sitting by the fire, "The body is fine, but the spirit has gone away." "Gone where?" young Lindiwe had asked. "To a safe place. When the pain is too great, the spirit hides, and the body stays behind, empty. How do you bring it back?" Her grandmother had looked at her for a long moment, with the right voice, the right touch, and a remedy that opens the door between the body and the spirit. Lindiwe never forgot those words. Years passed. Grandmother Makosi grew old, and eventually her body could no longer carry her. Lindiwe cared for her until the very end. When her grandmother finally closed her eyes for the last time, Lindiwe felt as though the earth had opened and swallowed everything she knew. She was alone. The village felt empty without her grandmother. The house where they had lived felt too quiet. Neighbors came to offer comfort, but Lindy could barely speak. She simply sat in the doorway and stared at the hills. Among those who came to the funeral was Tendai. Tendai had grown up in the same village. The two girls had been close friends since childhood, but Tendai had moved to Johannesburg years ago, looking for work and a better life. When Tendai saw Lindiwe sitting alone after the burial, she sat beside her. "You cannot stay here by yourself," Tendai said. Lindiwe's voice was quiet. "This is where I belong." Tendai shook her head gently. "You belong wherever there is a future for you. Come stay with me in Johannesburg. There are opportunities there. You are smart. You are hard-working. You will find something." Lindiwe did not answer, but Tendai wrote her address on a piece of paper before she left. "When you are ready," Tendai said, "I will be there." A month passed. The silence of the village became too heavy. One morning, Lindiwe packed a small bag, locked the door of the house, and walked to the bus station. Now she stood on a busy street in Hillbrow. Looking at that same piece of paper, she asked a woman passing by for directions. The woman pointed down the road. Lindiwe followed the path, and after a short walk, she stood in front of a small apartment building. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on a door. The door swung open and Tendai's face lit up. Lindiwe! Tendai pulled her inside and wrapped her arms around her. You came! I came, Lindiwe said softly. The apartment was small. One room with a bed, a couch, a tiny kitchen, but it was clean and warm. Tendai set down a plate of food in front of her. Eat first, we will talk after. That night, as they lay in the dark, Tendai spoke. Tomorrow I will take you to a care agency I know. They place people in homes, cooking, cleaning, taking care of people who are sick. The pay is decent. Lindiwe stared at the ceiling. I do not have experience with that kind of work. You took care of your grandmother for years, Tendai said. That is more experience than most people have. The next morning, the two women walked to a small office near the city center. A sign outside read, Johannesburg Home Care Services. Inside, a woman in glasses sat behind a desk. Tendai spoke first. My friend needs work. She is one of the most caring people I know. The woman looked at Lindiwe. What is your name? Lindiwe. They asked her some questions. They gave her a few simple tasks. After about 20 minutes, the woman nodded. We will put your name on our list. When something opens, we will call you. Days passed. Lindiwe helped Tendai around the apartment. She cooked, she cleaned. She walked the streets of the neighborhood, learning the city slowly. But every day, she checked her phone, waiting. Then one morning it rang. Good morning. This is Johannesburg Home Care Services. We have a placement for you. Lindiwe sat up straight. Yes, ma'am. The family needs someone to help care for a young girl who is very sick. It is a live-out position, daytime only. Can you come to the office today? I will be there, Lindiwe said. When she arrived at the office, the woman handed her a folder. This is a very important family, she said. The father is a well-known businessman. Their daughter has been in a coma-like state for months. No one can explain why. Lindiwe listened carefully. Your role will be to sit with the child during the day, feed her through the tube, keep the room clean, monitor her condition. The mother works from home, but cannot be beside the bed all day. I understand, Lindiwe said. One more thing, the woman added. Previous caregivers have left because the situation is emotionally difficult. Are you prepared for that? Lindiwe thought of her grandmother's face. Yes, she said. I am. Later that afternoon, Lindiwe stood in front of the tall gate of the Asante mansion. The house behind it was larger than anything she had ever seen. She pressed the intercom button and waited. A security guard let her in. She walked through a wide garden and up to the front door. A woman in a uniform opened it. You are the one from the agency? Yes, ma'am. She was led through a hallway lined with framed photographs. Family portraits. Nia as a baby. Nia on a swing. Nia laughing with paint on her hands. Lindiwe's heart tightened at the sight of the happy little girl in those pictures. They stopped in front of a study. The door was open. Inside sat a woman at a desk. She was elegant, well-dressed, but her eyes told a different story. The sadness was deep and unmistakable. Ma'am, this is the lady from the agency, the housekeeper said. Ya stood slowly. Come in. Lindiwe stepped forward. My name is Lindiwe. Ya studied her face for a moment. There was something calm about this young woman, something steady. Follow me, Ya said. They walked down a hallway and into a quiet room. The curtains were drawn halfway. Medical equipment hummed softly. And there on the bed lay a small girl with her eyes closed. Her braids rested neatly on the pillow. Lindiwe felt her breath catch. This is my daughter, Nia, Ya said. Her voice trembled slightly. She has been like this for 3 months. The doctors cannot tell us what is wrong. Lindiwe looked at the child, at the stillness of her hands, at the way her chest rose and fell slowly, at the small frown between her eyebrows, as if even in sleep something troubled her. You will stay with her during the day, Ya continued. Feed her, clean the room, talk to her if you wish. The doctor visits each afternoon. Yes, ma'am. Ya paused at the door. She used to sing, she said quietly. All the time. Made up songs about everything, the dog, the clouds, her shoes. A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it quickly. I will leave you now. Lindiwe stood alone in the room with the sleeping child. She pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. She looked at Nia's face for a long time, and something stirred inside her. A memory, clear as morning light, her grandmother's voice. Sometimes the body is fine, but the spirit has gone away. Days passed. Lindiwe came every morning at 7 and left every evening at 6. She did her work quietly and carefully. She kept Nia's room spotless. She adjusted the child's pillows. She wiped her face with a warm cloth. She spoke to her softly throughout the day. "Good morning, Nia. The sun is out today. I brought a little flower from the garden. It is yellow. Your mother told me you like to sing. I used to sing with my grandmother too." The child did not respond. But Lindiwe kept talking anyway. As the days went on, Lindiwe began to observe Nia more closely. She noticed small things the machines would never catch. Sometimes Nia's fingers would twitch slightly. Sometimes her breathing would change when someone entered the room. Once, Lindiwe saw a single tear roll down the corner of Nia's closed eye when Ya was speaking to her. Lindiwe said nothing about it, not yet. But at night back in Tendai's apartment, she lay awake thinking. "The signs are there," she whispered to herself. "Her spirit is still close. It has not gone far." She thought about a boy in her village years ago. He had been 7 years old. After his mother died in a fire, the boy stopped speaking. He stopped moving. He lay on his mat with his eyes closed, and nothing anyone did could bring him back. The village doctor said his brain was damaged. His father began to grieve for a living child. But grandmother Mahosi had gone to that house. She had sat beside the boy for 3 days. She had used a remedy, a specific combination of herbs, not just to heal the body, but to calm the fear that had locked the spirit away. She had also done something the doctors never thought to try. She had talked to the boy. Gently, slowly, in a voice so steady and warm that it became a bridge between the dark place where the boy was hiding and the world that was waiting for him. On the 4th morning, the boy opened his eyes. Within a week, he was walking. Within a month, he was speaking again. Lindiwe remembered every detail, every plant, every step. Her grandmother had made her watch carefully, as if she had known that one day Lindiwe would need this knowledge. But telling the family felt impossible. She was nobody. A village girl hired to clean and sit beside a bed. Who would believe her? A week passed, then another. One afternoon, Ya came into Nia's room earlier than usual. Lindiwe was wiping Nia's hands with a warm cloth. Ya sat in the chair beside the bed. She looked exhausted. "How was she today?" Ya asked. "She was calm," Lindiwe said. Then she paused. "Ma'am, may I say something?" Ya looked at her. "Of course." Lindiwe spoke carefully. She chose every word like a person walking across a narrow bridge. "Back in the village where I grew up, there was a boy. He went through something very painful, and after that he closed his eyes and did not wake up, just like Nia." Ya turned fully toward her. Her eyes sharpened. "My grandmother was a healer," Lindiwe continued. "She treated the boy. She said it was not a sickness of the body. It was a sickness of the spirit. The pain was so great that the spirit went away to protect itself." "What happened to the boy?" Ya asked quickly. "He woke up. My grandmother used herbs and a treatment that she developed over many years. It took time, but the boy recovered completely. The room was silent except for the hum of the machines." "Are you saying you think the same thing happened to Nia?" Ya asked. "I cannot be sure," Lindiwe said. "But the signs are very similar." Ya stared at her daughter, her lips pressed together tightly. "The doctors have done every test, I know, ma'am. And I am not saying the doctors are wrong. I am only saying there may be something they have not considered." Ya stood up and walked to the window. She stood there for a long time. Then she turned back. "I need to think about this." "I understand," Lindiwe said. That night, Ya told Kofi what Lindiwe had said. His reaction was immediate. "Village herbs?" He shook his head. "Ya, we have spent millions on the best medical care in the world. And you want to try herbs? I know how it sounds. It sounds desperate." Ya's eyes flashed. "I am desperate, Kofi. Our daughter has been lying in that bed for 4 months. 4 months. And every single doctor has told us the same thing. They do not know. They cannot explain it. They have no treatment." Kofi was quiet for a moment. "There is something about that girl," Ya said softly. "About Lindiwe, something real. She is not pretending. She is not trying to impress us. She simply told me what she knows." Kofi rubbed his face with both hands. He looked at the ceiling. Then he said something he never thought he would say. "All right, 3 days. If nothing changes in 3 days, we stop." The next morning, Ya called Lindiwe into the study. "Sit down," she said. "My husband and I have discussed it. We are willing to let you try." Lindiwe's eyes widened slightly. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for trusting me. How do we get what you need?" The herbs grow near my village. I know where to find them. Then we will arrange transport for you today." By noon, Lindiwe was in a car heading east toward the rural lands of the Eastern Cape. The driver was quiet. The road stretched long and flat through open country. Lindiwe watched the landscape change from city to farmland to hills she recognized. They arrived at the village by late afternoon. Lindiwe walked into the forest where she had followed her grandmother countless times. She moved through the trees with certainty. Her hands found the right plants the way a musician finds the right keys. She gathered the leaves. She dug for the roots. She whispered a quiet prayer. "Gogo, please guide my hands. Let this help that little girl." By evening, she was on the road back to Johannesburg. It was almost midnight when the car arrived at the Asante mansion. Ya was waiting at the front door. "Did you find everything?" "Yes, ma'am." They went to the kitchen. Lindiwe washed each herb carefully. She separated the leaves from the roots. She crushed some with a stone she had brought from the village. She heated water slowly and added each ingredient in a specific order, waiting between each one. Ya watched in silence. "This part goes into the water she drinks," Lindiwe explained, "a small amount 3 times a day." She held up a separate mixture. "And this is applied to her temples, her wrists, and the soles of her feet, twice a day, morning and night. For how long?" "Give me 4 days," Lindiwe said. "If there is even a small sign of change, we continue. If nothing happens, I will stop." Ya nodded. 4 days. They went to Nia's room together. Lindiwe gently lifted the child's head and gave her a small amount of the herbal water through a dropper. Then she carefully applied the remedy to Nia's temples, tracing slow circles with her fingertips. She did the same at the wrists and feet. As she worked, she spoke softly to Nia. "You are safe now. No one will hurt you. Whenever you are ready, you can come back. We are all waiting for you." Yaya stood by the door, tears running silently down her face. The first day passed. Nothing changed. The second day was the same. Dr. Mabaso came for his visit on the second afternoon. He saw the herbal mixture beside Nia's bed. He looked at Ya with concern. "Mrs. Asante, I must advise caution. Unverified remedies could interfere with her condition." "There is no condition to interfere with," Ya said quietly. "You told us that yourself." The doctor paused. He had no response to that. 2 more days, Ya said. "That is all I ask." The doctor sighed. "Please let me know if anything changes." The third day came. Lindiwe arrived early. She prepared the morning dose and sat beside Nia's bed. She applied the remedy to her temples, her wrists, her feet. Then she sat and spoke to her. She told her about the village, about the hills and the rivers, about her grandmother and the fire they used to sit beside. She told her about the birds that sang in the morning and the way the stars looked at night when there were no city lights. Hours passed. The sun moved across the room. Then, just after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, something happened. Nia's fingers moved, not a twitch, not a reflex. Her fingers curled slowly, deliberately, around the edge of the blanket. Lindiwe froze. She watched, her heart pounded. Then Nia's lips moved. No sound came out, but her lips moved. Lindiwe ran to the door. "Ma'am, come quickly." Ya rushed in. She looked at Nia. "What happened? Watch her hand." Lindiwe whispered. They both stared. Nia's fingers moved again. And then, very slowly, her eyes opened. Ya gasped. She covered her mouth with both hands and dropped to her knees beside the bed. Nia's eyes were unfocused at first. They drifted around the room like someone waking from a very long dream. Then they found her mother's face. "Mama," she whispered. The word was barely a breath. Ya broke down completely. She pulled Nia gently into her arms and held her. "I am here, my baby. I am here. I never left." Kofi was called immediately. When he walked into the room and saw his daughter's open eyes looking at him, the man who had commanded boardrooms across a continent stood in the doorway and wept. The days that followed felt like a slow sunrise. Nia did not recover all at once. The first day, she could only stay awake for short periods. The second day, she began to drink water on her own. By the third day, she spoke in short sentences. By the end of the week, she was sitting up in bed, asking for her coloring books. Dr. Mabaso came to examine her. He ran every test. He checked every reading. He stood in the room, shaking his head slowly. "There is no medical explanation for this," he said. "Everything we could not find before, every function is now returning to normal." He looked at Lindiwe, who stood quietly in the corner of the room. What exactly did you give her? Lindiwe explained the herbs, the preparation, the application. The doctor listened carefully. Then he spoke. I have practiced medicine for 27 years. I have never seen anything like this. Another doctor, a younger one who had come along, spoke up. Sometimes healing lives in places we have not looked yet. 2 weeks later, Nia was walking. She was still thin, still quiet at times, but the light in her eyes was back. One morning, Ya heard something from the garden that made her stop in the hallway. Singing, Nia was sitting on the garden bench, making up a song about a ladybug on a leaf. Ya leaned against the wall and cried. But for the first time in months, the tears were not from pain. That evening, Kofi and Ya invited Lindiwe to join them for dinner. She hesitated, but they insisted. The table was set beautifully. Nia sat between her parents, eating slowly, still regaining her strength. After the meal, Kofi looked at Lindiwe. Lindiwe, he said, you saved our daughter. You saved this family. I only did what my grandmother taught me, Lindiwe said quietly. Tell me something, Kofi said. What is your dream? Lindiwe was silent for a moment. Then she spoke. I want to finish my education. I want to study medicine. Real medicine. I want to learn the science and combine it with what my grandmother taught me. I want to build a clinic one day in my village where people can be healed in both ways, body and spirit. The room was quiet. Ya reached across the table and took Lindiwe's hand. You will have that, Ya said. Over the following days, Kofi made phone calls. He spoke with university officials, he spoke with the dean of a medical school, and he spoke with his lawyers. Arrangements were made. One evening they called Lindiwe into the living room. You have been accepted into the University of Cape Town's pre-medical program, Ya said. Full scholarship, funded by our family. Lindiwe stared at them. What? We have also established a trust fund in your name, Kofi said. When you graduate and finish your training, there will be enough to build that clinic you talked about. Lindiwe's hands trembled. She pressed them together in her lap, trying to hold herself steady. But the tears came anyway. Sir, ma'am, I do not know how to thank you. Ya smiled. You already thanked us the moment our daughter opened her eyes. There was more. They gave her a room in the mansion. They would not hear of her going back to the small apartment. They arranged for a driver to take her to university every day. And Kofi told her something that stayed with her for the rest of her life. You are family now, Lindiwe. This is your home. But Lindiwe did something before any of that began. The day after she received the news, she took a taxi across the city to Hillbrow. She climbed the stairs to the second floor and knocked on a familiar door. Tendai opened it. Lindiwe, what are you doing here? Lindiwe smiled and held out an envelope. What is this? Tendai asked. Open it. Tendai opened the envelope and found money inside. Her eyes went wide. Lindiwe, what is this for? When I had nothing, you gave me a place to sleep. You gave me food. You walked me to the agency. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. Lindiwe's voice was steady but full of feeling. I will never forget that, and I will never stop being grateful. Tendai pulled her into a hug so tight that neither of them could speak for a long time. Months passed. Lindiwe began her studies. She was a dedicated student, always in the library, always asking questions, always connecting what she learned in textbooks to what her grandmother had taught her by the fire. Professors noticed her. Classmates respected her. One afternoon, she sat in the back of the SUV as the driver took her home from campus. The Johannesburg skyline stretched out before her. Tall buildings, wide roads, a sky turning gold and orange as the sun set behind the city. She thought about the day she first stepped off that bus in Hillbrow with a single bag and a folded piece of paper. She thought about her grandmother's hands, steady and sure, grinding herbs by the fire. She thought about little Nia's voice, whispering Mama after 4 months of silence. A gentle smile crossed her face. She whispered so softly that even the driver could not hear. Thank you, Gogo. I will make you proud. And deep in her heart, she knew with absolute certainty that her life would never be the same again.